another big thing, and we've probably said it already, is just staying consistent. If you want to make gains over the...
Have we mentioned that on a...
We've never said the word consistent ever.
On a Coaches on Couches before?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing slouches.
That was probably my favorite drum roll so
like
far.
That?
Yeah.
Mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah. All right, we're
Supreme slouch.
Supreme slouch on the couch today. Stitcheroni, the French bulldog. She's probably gonna pass gas 3 or 4 times, and you'll probably hear her snoring through the microphones. But
don't worry about that.
Yeah, she's all good.
Don't worry about that.
Today we're gonna talk about off-season gains. Making gains in the off-season. I think a lot of people do a little hibernation.
Yes.
And spend every year starting over whenever they decide to get going.
Yeah. Time change. From time change to time change seems to be hibernation, which we don't want.
Not good if you actually have goals.
Exactly.
So we will get to that topic, but first, I am Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last decade through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking Facebook and the YouTubes at Build Peak Compete, or all up on that Instagram at BPC Performance.
Little slip there, Funston.
I did?
Little slip.
Well, you know.
Bubble.
I know, I keep just trying to do it. I'm not committing to just doing it from memory. Instead, I'm going back and forth between the phone and it's just a cluster.
Well, you know what's next? We got shout-outs.
Shout-outs. And a shout-at.
Pretty big one.
Shout-at.
Pretty big weekend. I spent the weekend in Chattanooga. Stayed in the tiny home.
Yeah, how was the tiny home?
Terrible.
The location looked awesome.
Location, couldn't beat it.
Yeah.
You were literally on the side of Lookout Mountain, and they were using the property as like a launch for paragliding, which was pretty cool. But we were in the smallest of the 3 tiny homes, and it was extremely small.
Really?
And I did not sleep well. But
was Stitch there?
Stitch was not there.
Why you didn't sleep well?
Was not there. But I think maybe if we stayed in one of the ones that were ours was like 160 square feet total. I think if we had stayed in one that was like 300 square feet, we might have had a little bit more room to move around and sit somewhere. Yeah. There's literally nowhere to sit in this little tiny home.
Gotcha.
But anyways, stayed in Chattanooga all weekend. We had a good time. We went hiking in Cloudland Canyon and stuff like that. Girls had a great time. But we went and watched on Sunday, Ironman Chattanooga.
Yep.
I floated the course most of the day, and our folks actually had pretty good days considering how hot it was. It was crazy hot. It was okay in the morning, but it quickly, I left the tiny home, descended the mountain, went down to the kind of the mid part of the loop, and by the time I got there, it only took me maybe 45 minutes to get there, and I was soaked. I mean, dripping sweat. And sitting on the side of the road, I was just sweating already.
Man.
So
fitting that we did last week's Coaches on Couches as battling the extreme heat.
Yeah.
That was timely.
Yes.
And intentional.
So Wayne Ogorzalek, Adrian Hall, and Bobby Weakley.
Raekwon?
Raekwon
Goodbody. You can find him on Instagram. Raekwon Goodbody.
All had good days. They made great decisions out on course to kind of dial it back a little bit, focus on their hydration. I think on any given day, all of them could have cut 30, 40 minutes out of the race, but they raced smart. And in the case of and most of them ran most of the run. They walked the aid stations to get fluids, but for the most part, they kept running.
It wasn't a death march.
Which was not the case for the majority.
Yeah.
400 people DNF, most people were going out at race pace and tanking off to walking toward the end. So those guys executed great. Super, super proud of them. And then Kiri Ness, who was at the Tri-Camp, also finished Ironman Chattanooga.
Her second, right?
Yeah, I think it's her second finish. We had some folks at Augusta 70.3, Chris Watts and John Zinn, both had PRs. Again, the conditions determined how fast you could run, basically. And but both of those guys had PRs, so good days on there. It was a rough day, tough day, but good days overall.
Which is why the shout at today is the heat.
Yeah.
And literally, if it had been a week later, I mean, temps are supposed to be quite a bit better. I think across most of the
it's crazy
the region.
Hot
I
still.
think it's supposed to be better, but
it is October, right?
Gosh, I saw a little meme or something on online yesterday. It was like, man, the weather is beautiful for July 71st.
yeah. It's just funny. It's crazy hot. Yeah. So one more little shout out we have is our man Johnny Pitts. Man, he went out. He finished. We talked about him a while back. He finished Ironman Wisconsin, and then in his transition period, he went to France. Took a little trip to France, and he spent basically 4 or 5 days riding a lot of the kind of routes around France that the Tour de France takes, just smaller sections of them. And one day he knocked out Mount Ventoux, and at 60 years old, going up Mount Ventoux without any aid, where half the people going up are on e-bikes now. Yeah. He was super stoked.
Epic climb for sure. That one's nuts.
That's just a bucket list,
for
checked
sure.
off. So.
Shout outs for me, Hart Robinson. We had the local Tristar CX race this past weekend, which I partook in.
Looked pretty fun.
My goal
Sorry I missed it.
My goal was to stay upright. But shout out to 90 West. They did a great job putting that on. Jonathan Pence, he put a lot of time into making that course a great course, keeping it mowed. So thanks to them. But Hart Robinson, first place both days, Saturday and Sunday, in the single speed and also in the Pro 123.
Crushed it.
So yeah, I was pre-riding one of the laps with him.
Yeah.
And he's just so smooth through the corners.
The tight.
Yeah. And then he bunny hopped everything. There's logs that are 18 inches. Oh, Bane Drain. There's 18-inch logs that most, a lot of people weren't even running over. They were stepping on top of to get over. I saw in some of the races, bunny hops those too.
And they were close together.
Yeah.
They weren't,
no, they were pretty close.
They were trying to put them close together so he couldn't do that. And Hart said, nope.
I'm still going to do it. Hart first place in both days, which was awesome. David Collins.
Did you see any epic fails in the sand pit? I was really wanting to.
I was really not wanting to be one of those. So I was pretty cautious.
Nice.
I got my big event this weekend, so I was like, I need to not get hurt. David Collins, second in the 35-plus race on day 2. And then Leigh Ruston, she did her first ever cyclocross race on Saturday. And then the very next day drove to Alabama for the Alabama Arse Whoopin'.
Trying to keep that
Trying
clean.
to keep it clean. That's actually the name of it, gravel event, her first ever gravel event. So shout out to her for doing both, 5th place on the gravel event. So
sweet.
4,000 feet of climbing and 44 miles. It was a pretty hilly race.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
8-9 minutes of shout outs. That's
Man.
Good.
Jeez.
All right. So we're going to get into this conversation about the off season. Like we said, a lot of people will finish their final race of the season, especially triathletes, not to call you guys out, but finish the last race of the season, especially if it's an Ironman, not to call Ironman out, but and then go into complete hibernation for a couple months, maybe till March, like you said. But
that's one end.
Yeah, realistically,
on the other side, we have the people who do the opposite and want to
want to actually make big improvements.
A season, one season to another, road season to cross season to gravel. Like now you can literally do events. Yeah, the season hoppers.
Yeah.
So that can be an issue as well.
Yeah.
We'll dive into that.
Just continuously going from one thing to the next, and just trying to maintain fitness. Like we've said it before, but it is unrealistic to carry a high level of fitness year round.
Forever, yes. We cannot burn the candle forever.
You're either eventually going to burn out mentally, get sick, or you're just going to start underperforming, and then you're going to be sad, basically, because you're underperforming all the time.
Which then weighs on you mentally, which then causes you to burn out. Yeah.
So, I think the first thing we have to kind of do is define off-season. It's a little bit different for different sports.
Exactly. And today we're going to try to kind of talk about a variety of sports, runners, triathletes, and cyclists. So, and this definition's a little different.
Yeah. So with triathletes, most of the time, your off season starts after your very last race of the season. For a lot of people, that's right now because they knock out that late season triathlon, whether it's a shorter race or a longer race, and then October, November is usually the end of it. And tri-season doesn't really even start until April at earliest, unless you go south. So for us, it's usually October, November is the start of the off season through about early, I would say into March, because basically we kind of define that as within 6 weeks of your first big race of the year.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the off season ends, and we get into that pre-competition period.
Yeah. So as a general definition, start of your it starts when your last race ends.
Yep.
So day one of your off season is the day after that event, and then 6 to 8 weeks before your next event the following season. Mm-hmm. That is how we are defining off season.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's kind of different for cyclists. So what would you say cycling, how that usually rolls around?
Yeah, again, it depends on where you're at. Like with cycling, you can race year round, and that can be an issue.
They start racing in Texas in January.
Yeah, I've got an athlete who started in January this past year. So January, and now there's cross races. If you're mixing it up, that is some cross training, which we're going to talk about. But still, if that starts turning into I want to be on for every race from January now all the way back through November, December, you end up having to neglect a lot of areas that are going to overall help your fitness. And that's kind of the thing we don't want. We need a downtime.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's big issues your body can run into.
So that's rule number one, basically. Take the break.
Exactly.
We've done entire episodes on transition. So take that 2-week transition period after your season's officially over. Mm-hmm. Take that 2-week break. If you don't feel like training, don't.
Exactly.
Take the recovery, keep it easy, have fun, put some more, money in the family bank.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. But you have to take the break.
And I think what a lot of people have issues with is, you've worked so hard to build fitness, and it's like, I don't want to lose any fitness. But we are here to tell you, losing fitness is okay. It's okay to, don't think of it as losing fitness. Think of that as recharging the batteries. And recharging the batteries year after year allows you to add another battery to that bank that you've got. And so the next year you're going to be going into the next season with a bigger storage of energy. Whereas if you're working off one battery because you never take a break and you've been running it dry, essentially all you're doing is little micro recharges, and that does not work. If you want to continue to see improvement and to perform better year after year, taking the break, losing a little bit of fitness, and usually it's not really losing a ton of fitness, you're losing some high end. So you feel like you've lost fitness, but instead you're training other energy systems and kind of building that foundation back. But take that break. It's okay to lose a little bit of that high end.
don't fear it. Our goal as coaches is to have you, like, once you're coming off the break, we want you, even though it might be December or November, we want you chomping at the bit to get at it, and to do some things that are going to really move the needle and improve. And if you've been pounding it all year and you never take that break, chances are you're going to be a little less willing to really do what's necessary to make those leaps. In the case of triathlete, in one of the 3 sports or more, you have to focus on that one sport. So you've got to, we want you chomping at the bit, and it doesn't usually happen if you don't take that break.
So that kind of moves us into the next spot here. So you've taken the break, mentally, physically, you're in a better spot now. You're chomping at the bit to get back on the bike or get back to training. Obviously, I usually say on the bike because I deal with mostly cyclists. But now's when you kind of go back to basics. Look at, okay, what are my limiters? What have I been neglecting? Technique and efficiency. This is a perfect time. You're scaling back some intensity on some of those workouts. Like, where are my limiters? Where do I need to put my time and energy into? And then one of the big ones is strength training.
Absolutely.
Like formal strength training, not like on the bike strength training.
Yeah,
or
I'm doing more low cadence these days.
Exactly. But actual strength training. I actually just met with a client the other day, one of my athletes, and he was saying, like, one of the things he's really noticed is how beneficial doing strength 3 times a week has been for him. Like, he was going through a crazy time at work, so wasn't able to ride nearly as much, but he didn't sacrifice the strength days to get more riding in. Instead, he stayed very diligent about getting 2 to 3 days in per week, and he's like, now that I'm able to bump my riding back up a little bit, he's like, I'm gaining fitness so much quicker, and he's like, my power just, like, seated surges and stuff like that. He's like, it's kind of a night and day difference. So do your strength training. It's going to keep you healthy. It's going to help prevent muscular imbalances that likely happen during the year when you're doing a very specific movement pattern. You're going to develop these muscular imbalances. We know everyone can be a little bit bad at doing their strength training during the year. If that's you need at least 12 to 16 weeks of good, solid 2 to 3 times per week focus on, like, making that a priority and knowing there's going to be some soreness. But if it comes at the cost of other workouts, that's okay.
Absolutely. And again, we've done entire episodes on strength training, and that's one of the big things that we said. You have to understand you're going to be sore. It's the off season. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're sore. If it's going to make you ride a little slower, oh well, not a big
fact,
deal.
That might be an okay thing. Like, you don't need to be hammering every weekend ride in the off season.
So if you're a triathlete or a runner, and it's kind of your off season, if you really truly want to make the most of it, the number one thing you can do is pick what you are worst at, your limiter. And for a lot of people, that's either technical or just speed, basically. So technical, it could be your swim technique. It could be your pedaling technique or out of the saddle or something like that. And it could be your running mechanics are poor. So you can spend a bulk of your time on those things and make some massive improvements. Now, if you think you're super solid in all of those things, now we can look at, like, what type of efforts are you the worst at? For a lot of triathletes, mainly because everyone likes to go long these days, the speed is a big limiter. Like, people don't know how to run fast. So take your time in the off season and do some 5Ks and kind of figure out where that ceiling's at. And then once you get a feel for that, like, it's so much easier to, structure the rest of your training around, like, those pace levels or heart rate or whatever. But you know that you're pushing hard enough, you're going easy enough. And then by knowing the ceiling, you know what easy is supposed to feel like. And most people don't know where the ceiling's at. You could be running faster. You may not you may not even know it.
And most triathletes have, so many workouts each week, compared to a cyclist that you may only have one harder training session really for each discipline, right? Yep. Whereas if you're able to sacrifice, a ride for an extra run and work the limiter, that's where you're going to see those gains for sure.
Yeah, I would say if you're looking to make a big improvement in one of the three sports, what you need to do is sacrifice a session from the other two.
Yeah.
Maintain those two, and then put that time into that one sport. So whereas most people in general are doing 3 swims, 3 bikes, and 3 runs with the occasional extra here and there, you can, like, if you are really bad at swimming and you want to make big improvements, swim 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
If you want to make a big improvement,
that was 45. He said 45.
45 times a week. Yeah, 425.
Oh, 425.
Yeah, 425 times a week. Same with biking and running. If you want to make big improvements, and it's not just volume, it has to be focused work on what the limiter is within that sport.
Yeah.
But the sheer extra frequency and volume is going to help
as well.
Make those improvements as well, because it's just frequency. You're doing, you're hitting the same thing more frequently. You're going to create more similar stress on the body, and then the body will adapt to it. But a lot of times we are so diluted as triathletes that there's not enough of a specific stress to really make a gain. So pick a sport, put it in 4 to 5 times a week, maintain the others, and you'll make a big leap in that one sport in the off season. But it just takes accepting the fact that the other two might not move much if you're just doing a bunch of maintenance.
Yes.
But we're in an A to B sport.
Yep.
So if you're...
Well, there's a good chance those are going to come back strong once you go back to doing them 3 times a week. Kind of gives you a mental breather from those 2 as well. Allows that to recover some mentally and physically. And then when you do get back to your normal, I guess you'd call it, 3 times per week for everything.
Yeah. And if you're not, like, if you're one of those people that says, well, I want to improve in everything, you can do that as long as the one that you're trying to improve the most in, you're basically training that sport similar to, like, your in season, and the other 2 are going to be more technical, like have to be easier and more technical work. You'll get the gains out of the technical work, but if you want to make the big leap, you need the technical plus the fitness gains. So you pick the one, train it like you're training in season, and the other 2 have to be maintenance, easy, lower volume, more technical focus.
Yep, for sure.
So another big thing, and we've probably said it already, is just staying consistent. If you want to make gains over the...
Have we mentioned that on a...
We've never said the word consistent ever.
On a Coaches on Couches before? Consistency.
If you want to at least maintain over the off season, you've got to stay consistent. And that really means keeping the normal frequency of training sessions you've done during the week, and not allowing yourself to go from riding or running or swimming or whatever. Let's say riding, in the case of cyclists, you're riding 6 days a week or whatever, and you go to 4 days a week. It's going to be harder to maintain when you don't have the frequency. You're going to have to add load to the other days, and then the whole mess is off. Everything's off. Yeah. So,
and in the event of that, that's for cyclists, it's okay to drop some of the numbers there. Like if you're going to from 6 to 4, say, but add in some cross training on the other days. So you may be dropping some of those ride days, but you're adding in some cross training, which is going to make you a more functional, stronger, well-balanced human being when you go back to more sport-specific stuff. So even though you may see a little bit of a drop in that bike fitness, you're setting yourself up to be a stronger, better cyclist the following season by working in that cross training. Yeah. And we want to make sure you're not someone who falls off your bike and, breaks into a million pieces.
Absolutely.
And cycling is a very low impact sport. I mean, after my last wreck where I did break, I think it was 1 million pieces. I mean, I've been very diligent about 2 times per week, heavier strength training, just to stress. I mean, you could probably tell. Can you tell these big pythons I've got?
I don't know if I can zoom in that
But
close.
the whole point is stressing the bones so that the bones go, oh man, I don't want to break. That's more load than I'm used to, and they build your bones up bigger. So
yeah,
you gotta put your body under some load.
We don't need to go into a whole nother episode on strength training. There's a couple of those already.
So yeah, cross training. Feel free to mix in cross training.
Cross training is like for some, like with cyclists, running is a decent option for cross training. If you're a triathlete, you can do like run the trails instead of running the road. Get a little bit less impact on what you're doing there.
Mountain biking.
Yeah, you can ride a mountain bike if you don't kill yourself.
I was gonna say same with both of those, right?
Yeah. You can, with cycling, you can go from your road bike and ride more gravel, or ride your cross bike, or, just change up what you're doing and not just only doing the same discipline of the same sport all the time. Mm-hmm. There are options. Swimming is the tough one because you're pretty much, you're
swimming
in the
an ocean.
Swim in the ocean, or swimming against the current in the river, or swim upstream. But just mix it up and keep things fun. Like this is the time to make big improvement, but it's also the time to keep it fun to the point where when you get into competition season and you're doing the very specific structured training that it's going to take to do the performance on the specific day, mm-hmm. that you haven't already unloaded your brain the whole off season.
Exactly.
So
you're essentially in the off season trying to build a big foundation, a big capacity, and gradually do it. It's not day one, but you're developing your body's ability to handle a larger workload. You're creating a more durable body, and then that way, and freshening your mind up by keeping it fun. That way, when you actually start the specific stuff, you've got the foundation. You've developed that ability to handle a large workload, and now when you focus that energy on key specific sport specific stuff, you have the energy and the mental ability, and you don't get burnt out right away, mm-hmm. To make that happen.
So I think another point here is when you get in the off season, it's relative to what you've been doing. Exactly. So we've got to work on the things that we've been neglecting.
Exactly.
In the later part of our season. So if you're doing an Ironman, in the last 2 months, you've basically just been doing volume.
Zone 3,
steady.
Zone 3, yeah.
Then now is the time to work on the opposite. Do some speed work, do some threshold work, push the VO2 a little bit.
And that doesn't mean you keep big volume and the other stuff and just add in high intensity stuff.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'll let you continue.
No, it's just it's where I was going with it. It's just you put in the opposite type of efforts, but you have to cut the volume down. Mm-hmm. But on the other side of things, if you've been racing crits, toward the end of your season, and all you've been doing is hour rides with tons of spiky mm-hmm. efforts and stuff like that, then now is the time for you to just put in some volume and just enjoy riding and be super steady.
Push the duration out, work that sweet spot. So sweet spot kind of defined by that upper zone 3, low zone 4 kind of area, for those that know what your zones are. Mm-hmm. For those that don't, basically going out and pushing where you're feeling really good tension in the legs, but you're not exploding after 20 minutes. Yeah. But it's a perfect time to what have you not been doing, and let's focus on that. It never fails. We have our House of Pain program, and essentially it's an off-season program, and it's developed for the first 4 weeks, or 4 to 6, I guess, is working on technique, efficiency. We're working some zone 3, mid to upper zone 3 is sort of our focus, extending the duration of that, getting the bodies ready to handle more workload, and then we start transitioning into larger chunks of longer duration, 15-minute, we do some that are 30 minute long, hard efforts. They're not max efforts, but they're they're tough. They're zone 3,
muscularly
zone 4.
tough.
But with that, we see good jumps in threshold power, right? As for most cyclists, especially those that I coach, as you get closer to the goal event, and that's why it's tough if your season's 9 months long, or if you want to make your season 12 months long, is you get close to your goal event and you start looking at, okay, this is your goal. How are we going to have you on peak form? Are there 3-minute climbs? Is it a crit where it's an acceleration out of every corner? Like, what are the demands? And if you're starting to work a lot of upper end, high intensity, 30-second, 60-second, 2-minute sprint stuff, you end up seeing a drop in threshold power. Like, it just naturally happens because you get away from the threshold stuff and that sweet spot stuff, and you're working high end, and eventually threshold starts dropping as you start working that's really above threshold efforts. So off season, for a lot of the people that I work with, it's like, okay, let's get back to that sweet spot stuff where we start pushing the threshold up. We're able to do long segments of work yet still recover from it. You can stack those back to back and not be totally demolished. Weekend rides can be fun. Go longer if you can. Don't feel like it has to be a race. Work that aerobic efficiency.
Yep.
And, once you hit season, you're going to be a better person for it.
I think a good point there is that if you are a time-crunched athlete, a lot of time spent in sweet spot is a really good way to maintain and build fatigue resistance.
Yep.
Like you said, you're doing a bunch of spiky peak efforts and then let off basically a zone 1 super easy recovery spin. Those workouts, if you can put them in training peaks, and when you pile, like when you look at like whatever 40 minutes of sweet spot work versus like even if you do 20 threshold efforts of 1 minute, the sweet spot work comes out at a higher workload. And so you actually are gaining more quote unquote fitness from doing that sweet spot work. Now you can't do that all the time, but when you're trying to like make things more fun and maybe even cut some volume from some people who are generally doing high volume and need a little bit more extra time or whatever, that sweet spot work, swim, bike, and run is all really good ways to maintain.
And I'll add to that, it's something that you can stack multiple days in a row of.
Yeah, it's not
like
as hard to recover
if you're having
from.
an athlete go out and do, which a lot of people listening to this probably, if you're a cyclist, you've probably been doing, VO2 max work. You've been doing 1 minute efforts. You've been doing 90-second, 30-second, 4 minute, but super high intensity. The next day, you're not going to have 3 days in a row of that. If you do, you're going to be totally demolished by the end of it. And now you need a 4 or 5 day recovery span. So the way you're able to build up more workload in the off season is you can stack sweet spot stuff, recover overnight, get back to doing another sweet spot the next day. I mean, you can string a lot of those together, and you don't have that big time. I mean, I don't want to give someone the wrong impression that you should do that every day.
No.
But you can stack those together and end up over the course of a 5 or 6 day span having a bigger workload than you would be if you were doing one hard day of 60-second work and then needing to take 2 days off, or not necessarily off, but active recovery to let the body recharge.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a bad rap. People call it gray zone. People call it whatever.
The zone 3 is the sneeze.
It's don't sneeze. Don't do it.
Okay.
Man, saved it. It's a great, it is a great use of your time, really.
Oh, for sure.
It can't be done every day, but it's more useful than people make it out to be. Everybody, you have to be doing, they say you have to be doing threshold, this and that, VO2 max, push, but sweet spot builds some good fitness.
Oh, for sure. And it's going to lead you into the season with the capacity to do greater amounts of work.
Yep.
You can get used to doing higher training stress, essentially, back to back to back. Obviously, listen to your body, and there's going to need to be recovery in there. Now, time crunched people, I would say one of the biggest mistakes we see with people is you get into the off season, they keep the same duration and they just take intensity back on everything.
Yeah.
So like what was maybe a high intensity 60-second or 4-minute efforts or whatever the focus of the day was, that gets dropped to like a zone 2. Like I'm going to work
Easy
base.
Yeah.
And then, so during the week, say you're the 1 hour per
1
day
hour
person.
Of base is not
No.
nothing.
Exactly. So you get to, from Monday through Friday, so you got 3 or 4 rides of an hour in zone 2, you're at what, like 120 TSS total?
Yeah.
Which is what you're probably getting in one good day, like hard group ride day during the week. And then going and doing an easy, 3 hour, 4 hour ride as well on the weekends. You're lowering your body's ability to handle a workload. So we would encourage people to replace those, 60-minute, don't take them down to zone 2. You can do zone 2 stuff on the weekend when you're going longer, when you're putting in 4 or 5 hours, hopefully. But start working that sweet spot.
Absolutely. Let's talk about nutrition.
Nutrition.
Should we talk about nutrition?
Nutrition.
Oh man. Okay, so
this really is key.
We really shouldn't. We won't dive too much into it.
Should we save this one for?
We'll just get our point across.
The week before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, we'll just make a point here. You have to eat based on energy expenditure. But basically, what happens people have, you're doing a decent amount of training, especially if you're doing Ironman or whatever. You're doing massive amounts of training. You pretty much eat everything that's in sight. And then your main event is over and you continue to eat the same way, even though your training volume and your energy expenditure drops by quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so that is a big part of why people end up gaining 10, 15 pounds in the off season, is because they're still eating like they're training a high training load.
Yeah.
So,
or people have been like so focused those last 6 weeks on trying to get down to race weight, which we don't encourage. This is part of this nutrition thing. Is like the off season's your best time to try to trim down some if you're someone who needs to. I mean, there's a lot of folks that mentally, there's a lot of eating disorders within the sport. People who think that they need to lose that extra 1 pound when really they're way below what they should be.
Drop a water bottle.
Yeah. But for most people, you should be looking to try to trim weight in the off season rather than trying to trim weight when you're trying to perform at a really high level and you need to fuel yourself to perform. So if you can, trimming weight in the off season through good nutritional choices,
perfect timing,
and being conscious of energy expended and calories putting in is a good thing.
Absolutely. That's pretty much where we'll leave that.
Yep, we can just leave it there. And we're not saying you can't eat some pie if you love pie, or celebrate the fact that you just celebrate the fact that you did just knock out your Ironman. Go out, have a great weekend or whatever. But then if you're wanting to make gains in the off season, which is the whole point of this, be focused about if that's your limiter, which for a lot of people that can be your limiter. Like you can't climb hills well. Well, guess what? Take a look at your power to weight ratio and let's work on improving both of those.
Yep.
Okay. We'll leave it at that.
Okay. Last point here is you still need recovery.
Correct.
Still need it.
Yep.
It doesn't matter that your training load has dropped by several hours. Even if you're not putting in the TSS or whatever, the training load that you've been doing, you're still going to need recovery. That's mental and physical recovery.
Yep.
Because if you are trying to make big improvements in the off season as a triathlete, one of those sports is going to involve high focus. And just even if there's not a ton of structure, like if you're doing mostly technical work in the pool, mentally that is draining. You're going to make great improvements, but trying to change your swim stroke, you have to have incredible presence in every session and really, really, really hard focus on it. So you're still going to need that mental recovery.
And that's kind of the big thing is the mental side for a lot of people.
Yep.
Like get that mental unload where you want to come back to training. Like if you find yourself in the off season, like dreading your next training session consistently, that's a bad thing.
It's a bad thing.
Take the unloads.
So keep them in there. And even if it's not a full week, like whereas maybe your training load was high enough that it took you, or it would require almost a full week to fully recover from the last block.
Yeah, so typically for our folks, it's either 2 to 3 weeks, typically, of harder work, followed by this recovery.
So you may cut that to like the weekdays. You may, just take it easy Monday through Friday, and then do your normal fun training, group training, or whatever on the weekends. So you still have to take them. You still need it. Just keep them in there. Don't try to go from October to March without taking a rest day or
and in your own mind, presuming that you're going easier, still keep those. Because even if you don't think your body needs it, your mind will definitely need it come July the following year.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the things you're doing this off season, don't just think about like how you're going to feel in March. We want to think about where mind and body are going to be in July. So keep that in mind. Keeping yourself mentally fresh is key. Staying
focused and through an entire season is tough. It really is. So
for sure.
You want to make improvements in the off season, but what you do in the off season sets you up for a really good season or a not so good season, depending on what you do or don't do.
And everyone, cyclists, talking directly to you, triathletes as well, fall in love with your trainer.
Yeah,
bike trainer.
Unless you're like one of those people that is just hard AF.
Oh yeah,
and will ride outside no matter
regardless.
What. Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Find a good trainer.
So if you're listening from the United Kingdom, they're not afraid of 30 degrees and rain.
Yeah.
I, however, am. I will not do that.
All of our Belgian friends and you guys are harder than we are. So, all right,
cool. If we missed anything, if there's things that you thought we left off this list, or areas of focus for off-season training and making those gains, let us know.
Engage with us. Let us know
if there's anything that we talked about that maybe you've implemented in the past and you had great results with us or with it. Let us know as well. And let's get the conversation going.
All right.
Cool.
We appreciate you guys hanging out, listening.
Stitch,
watching.
Anything to add?
Stitch is
still alive for those
still
watching.
Alive. You can see her if you're watching the video. You can see her chest is rising and falling, so she's cool.
All right, Kurt.
All right, we'll catch you guys next time.
Peace.
Adios.